Hello and welcome back to the Fruit of Grisaia, Amane's route. In the last episode, after the festival, Yuuji overheard some girls talking about Amane behind her back, calling her Qa'Rajh. When Yuuji decided to ask why, figuring they were some old friends of hers, he learned the story that Amane was the sole survivor of a bus car crash. A car crash that also involved his sister. This is Amane's diary. So let's continue. When I open I should probably also say before I get started, things are about to get dark. I know I said this at the ending of the last episode, but yeah, things are about to get quite grim. So you have now been warned. When I opened my eyes, I was in darkness. I couldn't see a thing. I blinked repeatedly and slowly counted to 10, but that didn't change. I couldn't even tell if my surroundings were really dark or if my eyes weren't working. In the blackness, so deep I couldn't see the palm of my hand in front of my face, I heard moaning voices from all around me. Painful, hacking coughs, screams of agony. My ears, at least, were functional. As I repeated quiet, calming breath, the scent of gasoline tickled my nose, and with that stimulation, the haze of the confusion lifted slightly. And I remembered that I was inside a bus. Groping around my surroundings, I vaguely realized that I was lying on top of something soft. Ow! When I tried to sit up, I hit my head sharply against the seat. I reached up to my eyes to check if my glasses had been knocked crooked, only to discover that they weren't on my face in the first place. I groped around the area frantically. Again, my hand found something strangely soft and warm. It was the heat of a living thing. Realizing with the start that I was touching another person, I reflexively jerked my hand back. Have you regained consciousness? Yeah. If you can move, I'd appreciate it if you could get off me. Sorry. Finally understanding that someone was pinned under my body, I fumbled in search of a foothold, but the floor my feet were searching for wasn't there. Watch your step. The ceiling of this bus has become a wall. The ceiling is a wall? Yes, as is the floor, and the things that were the walls are our new ceiling and floor. To put it more simply, we're overturned. Overturned. As I repeated that word out loud in an attempt to process its meaning, further understanding of the situation flooded into my mind. This was the inside of a school bus. On the way back from our summer training camp, our bus had fallen off a cliff, with us still inside. Please don't let me rush you, but could you perhaps get moving? You've been stepping on my left arm for some time now. Sorry. That hurts. Don't just thrash around. I'm so sorry. Is that a vocal tick of yours? Tell me your name. I'd like to be able to curse you when I deliver your well-deserved beating. I'm sorry. It's a joke. I'm Kazuki. And you? I'm Sue Amane. Alright, Susan. I know you by name and appearance, but this would be the first time we've spoken, I believe. Yes, it's a pleasure to meet you. You don't have to talk politely to me. I'm a first year like you, and if possible, I'd like to save the introductions for after you've removed yourself from the top of me. I'm about to cry from the pain. I'm sorry. That's the 5th time. Listen to me. The more you say the word sorry, the less meaning it holds. The next time you apologize to me, I'm going to get angry. Spare me your ooh. Move to your left. The exit is in that direction. Sorry. Don't growl at me. I really am sorry. I knew the name Kazuki. It was the name of the top incoming student, the girl who'd been chosen as our class representative to deliver the greeting speech at our entrance ceremony this spring. Kazuki sounded like a boy's name, and the girl herself appeared somewhat absent-minded, always walking around with a sleepy look on her face. And yet, there was something about her that suggested the cold sharpness of a blade. We belonged to the same basketball team and participated in the training camp together, but I had shied away from the foreboding aura she projected, and in the end we hadn't spoken so much as once during the trip. The interior of the bus was scattered with debris and every foothold was uncertain, but Kazuki quickly crawled her way through, dragged herself out a shattered window, and turned back to offer her hand to me. Come on, take my hand. Thank you. It seems we survived for the moment. Here, your glasses. They're yours, yes? Huh? Yes, thank you. Oh, she's adorable with glasses on too! And I love the pigtails. Can't be easy to play basketball with that much hair, I'd say. The moment I replaced the glasses on my head, I drew a harsh breath at the sight of the bus we'd been riding in. The roof was smashed, the windows all broken. The vehicle was completely overturned, its belly exposed. White smoke was pouring from the area of the still active engine. We need to get away fast or we'll be in danger. At this rate, that thing might explode. As that fear ran through my mind, Kazuki glanced briefly at my face with her usual sleepy expression, then snorted lightly. It's fine, rest assured, vehicles exploding after this sort of accident only happens in the movies. How did you know what I was thinking? You were staring at the smoking engine with a terrified look on your face. Even a child could figure that one out. Now then, who shall we save first? Huh? Now that you know there won't be an explosion, I was expecting the next word out of your mouth to be, we have to rescue everyone right away. Was I mistaken? Please don't look at me as if I was some sort of telepath. I'm just trying to cut to the chase. So, who shall we save first? I'll let you decide. 1, our teacher. 2, your best friend. 3, the wounded. Whose rescue would you prioritize? Why are you making me decide? It's something like a simple psychology test. I thought I'd use your answer to see what sort of person you are. Who would you save first, Kasami-san? Answering a question with a question will get you a good reputation as an idiot. Or do you mean to say that reserving your answer is the only answer you could come up with? In that case, I'll mark you down as a girl without a shred of decisiveness or ability to assess a situation. Is that alright with you? Very well, I'll decide. Let's save the captain first. Why the captain? Because I hate her. Huh? In response to the previous question, I wouldn't choose option 1, 2 or 3, but rather 4. The people I hate come first. A fourth option? Isn't that kind of cheating? I don't recall specifically limiting you to those 3 choices. It's also a test to see how you respond when the correct answer isn't given to you as an option. That's just a trick question, and why would you save the people you hate first? We're going to have to do this for all 12 people in there, you know. If the last one left is someone I hate, I definitely think this is too much of a pain in the ass. That's your reason? Yes, I prefer to get unpleasant things out of the way as quickly as possible. I tend to finish my summer homework before the vacation even begins. I sort of get it, maybe? I don't get it. You don't need to get it. Come help me if you'd be so kind. Yeah, sorry. To be honest, I found it very difficult to understand her thoughts. But I did understand that the word genius was probably created to describe this sort of person. There were 14 people riding on that bus, including the team's advisor. Eventually, 11 people emerged from its wreckage together with one small dog that belonged to a team member. The remaining 3 were dead. 2 were killed instantly when the bus fell. The other, still conscious immediately after the accident, rolled herself into a ball and moaned for 10 minutes before she died. Among the 11 survivors, 4 were wounded. 1 had broken both her legs. 1 had struck her head and suffered a laceration. 1 had received a gash to her abdomen from a sharp object. And the man who should have been our guardian, the teacher, who had been our team's advisor, was unconscious and showed no signs of waking. That, more than anything else, filled our hearts with gloom. None of us could get our minds around the situation we were in. Clutching our knees to our chest, we sat on the ground in dead daze. I believe we should attend to the wounded first of all. What do you think? But that heavy silence was soon broken. Kazuki spoke in a perfectly normal tone of voice. When I raised my head in response to her clear, firm words, I saw that she was addressing our group's official leader, the team captain. This is exactly the sort of situation where you need to maintain control, Senpai. Yes, I'm well aware of my responsibility, thank you very much, but what can we possibly do in these circumstances? Would you allow me to counter-argument? Go ahead. There are no guarantee whatsoever that help will arrive if we simply wait. If you feel you lack the capacity to lead in this situation, I can take on that role in your stead. Your decision? Don't give me that. If you make a mistake in judgment and things get worse, who do you think would take the blame? You're rather composed to still be worrying about such things in situations like this. Sorry, what was that? I didn't quite hear you. It was nothing important. So, does this mean you feel able to assume leadership? I don't need your concern. Ritsu, come over here. Yes. What can I do for you? Your family operates a medical practice, don't they? Yes, that's right. Then you can at least handle first aid, right? Get started right away. What? No, I can't do that. Just because my parents are doctors doesn't mean I know. You're still better than a complete amateur, aren't you? Stop whining and take care of it. But... Ritsu wrung her hands in front of her chest. I completely understood her feelings. Taking on the role of doctor simply because of her parents' occupations, the responsibility was far too grave. It wasn't as though she had inherited their medical skills, and superficial knowledge wouldn't be enough in this situation. The team captain, Sakashita Shiaki, and Koido Ritsu, a girl who had always played the role of her devoted underling. As a mere first year, I didn't know much about their relationship, but the fact was that I'd never seen Ritsu disobey an order from the captain. Ritsu, don't make me repeat myself. I understand. I'll start with Hiroka-san. What are you saying? Mr. Ochi has to come first. But both of Hiroka-san's legs are fractured. It's very serious. I'm telling you to look at Mr. Ochi first. Yes. Kazuki watched with the disdainful eyes of a spectator to an ugly farce as Ritsu swallowed her complaints. As our doctor walked away with sagging shoulders, Kazuki approached Sakashita for the second time. Captain Sakashita, may I have permission to survey the surrounding area? Don't just wander off by yourself. Why are you always trying to disrupt the group like this? Susan, I'd like you to accompany me if you don't mind. Huh? Okay. Excuse me, Kazami-san? It should be alright if I'm not by myself, yes? I'm trying to be considerate here, in my own way. It should be easier for you to push everyone around if I'm not here. Ugh. Let's be on our way, Susan. But wait! As I chased after Kasami Kazuki, I saw the captain's expression out of the corner of my eye. She was glaring at me, making no attempts to hide her displeasure. Her eyes asked, "Are you taking that woman's side?" In response, I offered a quick bow of my head. I didn't understand myself whether that gesture was an apology for siding with Kazuki or a silent attempt to convey, "I haven't betrayed you." Either way, some instinct inside me had judged that following Kasami Kazuki was the correct decision. Although I had seen Kazuki for the first time at the entrance ceremony, I had known her name for much longer. When we were grade schoolers, it was well known that an 8-year-old child had taken a special prize at the district painting contest. As the painting had been exhibited among other children's work, that was her only award, but it might have well taken the overall prize otherwise. Our class took a trip to see her piece on display at the district assembly hall. Even with my immature eye for art, I could sense something inexpressible in words from that painting, something that nonetheless moved my heart. And my impression of that work and the name of the genius who painted it were deeply etched into my mind. Kazumi Kazuki. She wasn't blessed with talent as a painter alone. She could do anything she tried, anything at all. Well, that might be a bit of an exaggeration, but on her first attempt she could usually produce adequate results. If it was a field she found particularly difficult, it might take 3 days of effort for her to reach average skill. Those were the rumors anyway. According to those who knew her, she lives in a different world, or I can't believe she's a human being, or she can see things normal people can't. At the time I was astonished that anyone could inspire such stories, many of which were so overblown that they took on a tinge of the occult. But when we entered the same school in the same year, even joining the same team, the girl appeared perfectly normal, if a little standoffish. Even so, I could vaguely sense that her true nature was somehow different from that of an ordinary person. To be honest, I had avoided her as a result. And now I was alone with her for the first time under these circumstances. Although I followed as instructed, I couldn't find anything to say to her, and she was equally silent. The two of us just trudged on, not exchanging a single word. The ground at our feet was rugged and hard, and rock walls loomed on both sides. When I looked straight up, there was nothing but trees and sky. We seemed to have fallen into some sort of fissure, a crack in the earth. The walls were maybe 10 meters tall at their lowest point. Not so high as to rule out climbing, but on both sides the rock face slanted inward as they rode up, hanging over us. With this pronounced of an overhang, climbing with bare hands seems impossible, and even with tools it would likely be difficult. Apparently Kazuki had been thinking along the same lines. She came to a stop a little ways ahead of me, placed her hand on one of the slanting walls of rock, and began to strike it with a stone she had picked up off the ground. What is that going to tell you? Oh, I don't know why I didn't. You finally open your mouth to ask me that, of all things? Don't you have other questions to ask me? Other questions? Such as, how can we climb these walls, or perhaps can we get back to the road, or what should we do next, among many others? Or the question that's likely foremost in your mind, why did you ask me to come? Or so I would imagine. You're right. Then I'll tell you straight. I chose you because you're the type who can't refuse when pressured. In your case, when asked, would you like to come along, you'll agonize over your decision, but when you're ordered, come with me, you'll obey without much thought, yes? What makes you think so? It's a conclusion I drew from the result of our little psych test earlier. Was I mistaken? Yes, she was probably right. When my mother asked me, what should we have for our snack today, I would answer, what do you want, Mommy? When she simply told me, we're having cakes today, I was relieved because I wouldn't have to choose. Given multiple choices, I would waver indecisively, and when given a single path, I would follow it obediently. That was just my personality. If I run my mouth, who knows what she'll pick out of my head next, or so I'm seeing on your face, but personally I'd prefer it if you didn't get too wary over this. As she spoke, Kazuki removed her cell phone from her pocket and looked into the screen. Ah, no signal after all. How about yours? Huh? Oh, I hurriedly pulled my phone out of my school uniform, but as expected, its screen was also displaying the words, no signal. No good, mine's out of range as well. Ah, no surprise. Kazuki turned off her phone immediately and slid it back into her pocket. You should turn yours off as well. The battery consumption is surprisingly rapid when it's trying to find a signal. Yeah. It wasn't as discouraging as I would have expected to find out all our cell phones were useless. To tell the truth, I had checked mine as soon after escaping the bus. Of course, the screen had also displayed no signal then. Finding that was still the case prompted a little more than the feeling of resignation. Well, expected as much. We were within a long tunnel-like crevice. Maybe if we just kept following it, partially because of wishful thinking like that, I wasn't in a state of despair at our situation. Another factor was the strange sense of security that came from being near this girl named Kazuki, as though I had found a firm, reliable ground to stand on. If I'm with this girl, it'll work out somehow. Her strangely powerful presence let me think such irresponsible thoughts somewhere deep down. This situation can't be called favorable. There was a heavily overgrown jungle visible in the direction Kazuki was pointing. It It was a dense forest, seemingly devoid of animal life, that seemed to actively refuse human entry. The thick wall of vibrant green almost seemed pleasant at a glance, and yet it was obvious that a single step inside would find you in an environment far too harsh to support human life. Even if you were to advance by hacking through the thick grasses and bushes rising over your head, the distance you could advance in one day would be pretty limited. And in avoiding the tall trees that grew close enough together as to block out the light of the day, you'd quickly lose any grasp of your own position anyway. If we'd been lucky, we might have discovered some traces of human entry, but there doesn't seem to be any point in getting our hopes up. If there's even one path a human traveled, follow it and you'll find a place where humans live. But the jungle in front of us showed no signs of such intrusion. Even so, I had some hope that we might stand a chance by pushing our way boldly through the woods. But that thought was shadowed by what Kazuki told me next. Take a look at this. She held out a compass we had used at the training camp for orienteering, one of our recreational activities. The needle that should have always thought north was pointing to the northwest. When she turned to face a different direction, it didn't move within the compass. Huh? What's going on? Well, to put it simply, the needle isn't working, meaning it's not functional as a compass. No way, why would... Most likely deviation. Take a look at the walls around us. The walls? As I looked up in confusion at the rock face looming above, she picked up a stone lying at her feet and then struck the wall sharply. The sound it produced was high-pitched clinking, like what you might expect from a hard metal surface. Some of the rock has vitrified. Most likely it was rapidly cooled after momentary exposure to an extremely high temperature, rendering it amorphous. I'm sorry, your language is too technical, I don't understand. It's similar to what you'd see after a volcano's lava cools, but the range is just too large. Too small for it to be an airburst, though. Probably a meteorite, I suppose? Meteorite? An actual meteorite? Well, a micro black hole impact seems a bit unlikely, so I would think a small-scale meteorite exploded before reaching the surface of the Earth, and a particularly large fragment fell here, perhaps. And that's why the compass isn't functioning. Entirely likely, the scattered fragments from its impact may have contained heavy minerals, perhaps leaving a number of spots with concentrated massive magnetic material. Under that theory, this unnatural terrain also makes sense. What do you think? I don't really... If Kazuki thought so, it was probably the truth. At the very least, I wasn't about to come up with any other possibilities. Well then, our immediate environment is composed of rock in which where not even weeds can grow. The area is surrounded by walls structurally impossible to climb. Our path forward ends in an impenetrable jungle. Our cell phones can't connect, and even our compass is of no use. A first-class disaster. Things are getting interesting. Interesting, you say? If I sounded callous, I apologize. However, I was thinking you might feel a little less anxious if you sensed some confidence in my words. Thanks for your consideration, but I think you should probably avoid talking like that in front of the other girls. I suppose. Although she nodded, I didn't feel that she was convinced by my words. Precisely because we were in such a bad situation, a confident leader who could pull off this sort of all-knowing God act would be ideal. But she wasn't the leader of our group. By rank, our teacher was first, the team captain Sakashita was second, and vice captain Okabe was third. Or should have been. But unfortunately, Okabe-senpai had died when the boss fell. Still, a first year like Kazuki had very little say in the team's decisions. I wonder if Captain Sakashita would be so kind as to transfer her leadership position to me. I think it would be more efficient that way, as I wouldn't need to waste time on submitting reports over every little thing. Hey, can I ask you something? What is it? Well, Captain Sakashita, a question you're uncomfortable voicing. That's not it. Do you maybe have an idea of what I want to ask you? Huh? What's this all of a sudden? Might you be mistaking me for God? Well, you know, you gave me that psych test before, right? Ah, that question. In other words, since Captain Sakashita said the teacher treatment comes first, you're curious what sort of conclusions can be drawn from that as an answer to the test? Yes, exactly. I think you have a rough idea, even if I don't spell it out for you, don't you? Captain Sakashita is a highly dependent type. Despite only feeling content when she's running the show, when she's faced with a decision that bears the weight of responsibility, she'll instantly look over her shoulder in search for help. In other words, you want to ask, I'll take control here if that's acceptable, Mr. Ochi. For what she needs Mr. Ochi. Understand? I think so. I'm not saying that's wrong, mind you. She's a student, so it's actually perfectly natural. But in her case, I doubt she's any different outside of school. I expect she pushes her father around at home. The sort of childish desire for superiority disgusts me. I'm sorry, I got sidetracked into a worthless topic, didn't I? As Kasami Kazuki apologized for babbling, her expression was a cheerful one appropriate for her age. But that bright smile was frightening under the circumstances. She does... Even here you can see the same kind of facial gleam that Yuuji has in a while, the few times we've seen him. I felt sure of it. This person was attached to nothing. She grabbed hold of anything she thought she needed, and she cast aside anything that lived outside its necessity. Maybe that was just another part of being a genius. As these thoughts ran through my head, Kazuki suddenly turned her back to me and mumbled a few words. That's not true. At that brief sentence, I felt a chill like cold fingers running down my spine. What's not? I think it's about time we returned. It would be unpleasant if they started thinking we made a run for it by ourselves. Ah, okay. If you compare the human brain to an engine, Kazuki's must have been operating at a far higher RPM than ours. She was constantly maintaining a speed of rotation that would quickly cause a normal person to overheat. I looked down at Kazuki's feet as she walked a few paces ahead of me. She was wearing the standard white sneakers specified by school. Since the girl cast a shadow and didn't appear to be floating, apparently she wasn't a ghost or other supernatural apparition. What's so funny? I'm sorry, I was imagining your thoughts at the moment and find them very amusing. I'm sure you would. Don't sulk, please. Let me just say for the record, I'm not a ghost, and I'm not a god taking human form in your dream either. I hadn't thought of that. Thought of what? I was wondering if you might be some kind of spirit, but I hadn't thought I might be the one dying, having a dream about an all-knowing savior. Even if I hadn't said it, I would expect you thought of it yourself within another 10 minutes or so. You're a weird girl. I suppose so. My mother told me something similar when I was 1.5 years old. And you actually remember? It's a joke. Wait, what part of that is a joke? It doesn't matter. Feel free to decide for yourself. I was actually understanding her less the longer we talked. The one thing I did understand was that Kasumi Kazuki's jokes aren't funny in the slightest. Well, that's like brother, like sister. Well, you know what, let's keep going. To put it briefly, it's a bleak environment. Having returned to the site of the accident, Kazuki and I explained the situation to Captain Sakashita, showing her the compass and its non-functional needle. She didn't stir from the rock she had been sitting on. When we finished our story, she sighed deeply, leaned forward to take her head in her hands and answered with a brief, "I understand." And how are the wounded? The captain's only response was to sluggishly raise one hand and point. In the direction she indicated, Qa'Rajh was examining the wounded while trying to hold back her tears. What do you think, Qa'Rajh-san? Mr. Ochi doesn't have any large external wounds. I think it's a light concussion. If we let him lie down for a while, he'll probably regain consciousness. Iroka-san has fractured her left shin and her right knee. The bones didn't break the surface, but both are completely broken. She's conscious, but in a great deal of pain. Sakurai-san has a laceration on her abdomen. At the moment of the accident, something sharp from the wound, probably a shattered bottle or something, pierced her stomach. The bleeding is already beginning to slow. Kaneda-san has a large cut on her forehead above her right eye. I think she probably hit it against something. The bleeding has stopped. And what? Huh? You really just examined them? Haven't you performed any treatment? I can't. We don't have any tools. Even if we did, there's no way I could do anything. It's simply a matter of returning the broken bones to their original position and fixing them there, and sewing together the lacerations. I've never done that sort of thing, I'm telling you. I can't. If you think it's so simple, then you do it. Alright, could you bring some water to a boil? Huh? We used a camp stove on the trip, remember? Please boil as much water as possible and make a saline solution. If you can excavate the first aid box and fishing tackle while you're at it, I'd appreciate it. Yes, got it. Kasami-san, do you have experience in treating broken bones? None. All I have is knowledge I've gained from books. How about you? None. Well, that's only to be expected. Are you going to be able to do this? If there's someone with experience and confidence, I'll gladly let them take over. I wouldn't want people to think me as a presumptuous job-stealing upstart. Kazuki turned around quickly to face the depressed group of girls, raising her right hand and asked, "Does anyone have medical experience?" No one raised their hand in response, not even one met Kazuki's eyes. If no one has any experience, then it hardly matters who steps up, does it? Or would you rather conclude it's their fault for getting injured and leave them to their own devices? That's over the top. Personally, I think I could have done something if I tried. It's the worst of all regrets. Let's get started. First, Kaneda-san's head laceration. Because you hate Kaneda-san? No, it's because Kaneda-san has the most minor injury. If the more seriously injured died while you're examining those with minor wounds, you'll save the effort of a useless medical examination, you see. Oh my, why go silent there? I told a joke, so you have to laugh at least a little, or I'll be embarrassed. There's no way anyone's going to laugh at that. Just wondering, but do you have any friends? Let's see, I suppose at present only you. As I was saying, why the silence? Should I laugh? I suppose so. Then I'll cry. I'm sorry, I can't keep up with this conversation. Following Kazuki's instructions, everyone with the physical energy and willpower to move cooperated to retrieve the first aid kit, camping equipment, and fishing tackle from the overturned bus. Kazuki gathered the tools she thought would be useful, passed them to Qa'Rajh to be disinfected, and began examining the wounded while waiting for the water to come to a boil. As promised, she looked at Kaneda-saya and her head laceration first. Well, are there any irregularities in your hearing? Any noticeable difference between what you hear and from your left ear and right ear? I don't think so. I see. Please, give me your right hand. Kaneda's wound had already been disinfected, sutured shut, and covered with a roll of bandage. When Kazuki said she planned to use a fishing hook to stitch up the cut, I couldn't help raising doubts about whether such a procedure could be hygienic, but when she responded, well, I suppose we could try sticking it together with superglue. I'm sure that would make for a much prettier result. I decided I should probably keep my mouth shut. After that, I did nothing but silently record Kazuki's words in the memo pad we were using as a makeshift medical record. Does this hurt? Kazuki took a firm grip on Kaneda's right hand and dug her nails firmly into her index finger. Ow! Of course it hurts. I'm sorry. How about your left hand then? Does it feel pain the same way? Ow, 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 ow! Look, I said it hurts! It almost seemed like Kazuki was enjoying watching Kaneda squirm in pain. A question leaked out from my mouth. Hey, what exactly are you doing? She struck her head, so I'm attempting to determine if there's any difference in the effectiveness of her sense organs or nervous system between the left and right side of her body. I only noticed when I was sewing her wound, but her left eye is slightly isotropic, or lazy. Her sphere of vision differs between her right and left eyes. Huh? I didn't even notice. I hurriedly add the word isotropic to the record in the notebook. You... I'm sorry, what was your name? Kaneda-saya. Ah, that's right, Kaneda-saya. Saya-san. That's a nice name. You think so? Yes, I'll have to remember it in case I ever decide to keep a pet dog. Dog? I'm sorry, that's just an attempt at a joke. Oh, why are you apologizing for me? Because I'm your friend, of course. I'm happy to hear that. You're my first best friend, you know. I didn't remember adding best to that phrase, but leaving that unsaid was probably the smart move here. Well, I'd learned that much, so I must have been growing used to it. I guess the word friend that I had spoken just now wasn't entirely sarcastic. I'd like to smother you with hugs and kisses right away, but I need to finish examining Qa'Rajh, so let's save it fully after. Please, take your time. Well, where were we? Alright, Qa'Rajh, were you ever physically abused as a child? Never. Ever dropped on the floor by your mother? No. Then this accident is the cause of your squint. Don't worry, I think it'll heal. Alright, next. Kazuki continued her examinations along these lines, eventually working her way through all of the girls, even those with no apparent injury. That girl was the last one. There were some people with bruises indicating light internal bleeding, but for the most part we only got minor scrapes. Hiroka-san is definitely the worst off. The tibia and fibula of her left leg are broken, and her right leg has a compound fracture of the distal femur. Both were closed fractures, so there's no need to worry about bacterial infection, and I set the bones as best as I could, but she needs to go to a hospital. Sakurai-san's stomach was also pretty bad. The wound itself was large, so it appeared very serious, but it wasn't deep enough to damage her internal organs. Now that it's surgery, she should be alright. The biggest concern there is infection. If possible, she needs antibiotics administered at a hospital. For the moment, please tell the captain that we've done what we can. Huh? You want me to tell her? Of course. What do you think I made you tag along as I played doctor? Even using the same words to describe the same situation, people will receive them differently depending on who speaks them. I doubt that our captain that captain of ours will trust any report of mine. Well, the last thing we needed was Kazuki's harsh tongue setting off a fight. You should ask the captain to please explain the situation of Mr. Ochi. That ought to be enough of an achievement to keep her from going into a sulk and making a nuisance of herself. There you go again. You really can't help yourself, can you? I'm actually holding back quite a bit, you know. Kasami-san? At that moment I realized something for the first time. Kazuki's face was flushed red, her breathing was rough, and she was sweating heavily. What's wrong? You don't look so good. It's my arm. Kazuki raised her left arm as she spoke, revealing it to be heavily swollen and purple. Huh? Wait up. What happened to this? It doesn't seem to be broken, but I believe there's a crack in the bone. A partial fracture, as they call them. Your left arm? No way. Isn't that what I stepped on in the bus? Did I do this? A seatbelt did it. Just before the accident, my arm was tangled in the strap, and the shock of the impact did the rest. Even if we accept the hypothetical possibility that you trampling on it was the final straw, it's hardly your fault that the accident occurred and created such a situation, now is it? That's true, but if I hadn't kept sitting on top of you like that... You're worrying too much. Say I did start ranting at you that this is all your fault. Could you lob off your own arm and hand it over? Sorry, that's not even possible. Then it's not worth troubling yourself over. I certainly don't intend to blame you. Don't get depressed. I'm really truly not upset. Goodness, should I have put things a little more gently? Are you alright? It hurts, but not bad enough to make me cry involuntarily, and I'm not quite childish enough to start blubbering about it to distract myself from the pain. I'm sorry. Are you the type who can't calm down unless there's someone around to punish you? Very well then, let's say you owe me a debt for this left arm. Debt? Yes, at a time of my choosing you must obey whatever orders I give you. I'll forgive you if you promise me that. You can just tell me now, I'll do what you want. Not good enough. A debt is always more profitable when you postpone the collection. Remember that. Don't worry too much. I don't intend to extort heavy interest payments from a friend. Kazuki's expression as he spoke those words was an artificially perfect smile, suggesting a kind of maturity well beyond her years. As I watched her face, I felt sticky sweat seeping out of the back of my head. Did I really just put myself at the mercy of a person like this? A basketball team's advisor, Mr. Ochi Yoshihiko, regained consciousness 30 minutes later. After hearing a brief summary of the situation from Captain Sakashita, Mr. Ochi called for all surviving students and had us sit on the ground together. Ooh. So that must be Mr. Ochi in the back here, over to the right. In the first place, what was the cause of the accident? Just as if we were still in the classroom, Captain Sakashita raised her right hand as she spoke. At her nearly accusatory tone, our young teacher and the driver of the bus wrinkled his face into something very close to a scowl. Don't know, I braked hard as soon as the wheel went out of control, but the thing just went right over the cliff, probably a blowout. Then what caused the blowout? How the hell would I know? I just woke up minutes ago. Please don't shout, everyone's terrified, you need to stay calm. I know that. A worthless argument along these lines continued for a good 10 minutes. Well, it doesn't appear like... Oh, Kazuki's arms is now in a bind. But apart from that, it doesn't appear like there are any other injuries. At least not visible. Wow, even then Amane was pretty tall. Standing in the foreground and all, but... I suppose she would be if you were playing for a basketball team. The situation being what it was, nobody tried to butt in or calm things down. We all sat there and waited for things to run their course. Watching our teacher and captain bellowing at each other meaninglessly, a few girls began to cry from sheer anxiety. The captain seized on that fact as a new line of attack. In that place filled with gloom and dominated by angry voices, Kazumi Kazuki smiled brightly, drew her face close and began to whisper in my ear. Good lord, even at a time like this, all she can think of is getting someone else to take responsibility. Surely assigning blame and identifying the cause can wait. Aren't there more important things we should be discussing? True enough, but I couldn't understand what she was expecting to accomplish by murmuring this to me. It wasn't like I had the ability to redirect the discussion. Complaining wasn't going to get us anywhere. If anything, there was a good chance this might make the situation worse. You two, what are you whispering about? See, I told you so. When you get spotted griping in the shadows, of course you're going to get told off. Well... As I hesitated, searching for some kind of excuse, Kazuki abruptly raised her right hand and asked for permission to speak. In regard to the cause of the blowout, I think it's likely that a sharp metal object of some sort fell from the bed of a truck carrying scrap then lodged in the front wheel of a bus. Do you have evidence of that? Please take a look at the tire in question. As directed by Kazuki's words, everyone present turned to look at the tires of the overturned bus. The front wheel on the right side was neatly torn around, its circumference cracked into two vertical halves. So we drove over something, a sharp metal board or something of the sort. Perhaps it was dragged by the tire and caught in the frame of the vehicle, so that every time the tire rotated it was successively damaged, finally culminating in a sudden burst. Watching Kazuki explain her theory with words and gestures, the majority of us felt the pieces falling into place. It made sense. Modern car tires are made so they won't rapidly lose air pressure from running over a nail, but if a piece of metal slowly tears it apart, this is the inevitable result. Furthermore, having unfortunately run over that object, we didn't crash through any fault of Mr. Ochi's. If we'd been on a straight road when the tire blew out, he would have brought us safely to a halt. If you want to assign blame, the fact that the tire happened to blow out as we were rounding a curve, in other words, sheer bad luck, is most responsible for the accident. Having met with this terrible luck, at the very least those of us gathered here are still alive. Perhaps we should place our emphasis on how to preserve that sliver of silver lining of good fortune. What can we possibly do in this situation? We can at least attempt to ward off despair, can't we? In other words, I think a positive dialogue in search of hope would be a lovely variety by now. Rather than grieving over your poverty, fantasize about what you'll buy if you win the lottery. You'll sleep better at night. That was Kazuki's argument in a nutshell. Although if she said it outright, it was obvious she would have angered the captain. And so, at Kazuki's request, I took my notebook in one hand and repeated the details of our situation to the group. We were surrounded by a dense sea of trees without so much as an animal trail running through it. The cliffs hung over us like an overturned mortar bowl, making a climb back to the road impossible. And our cell phones couldn't find a signal. To escape alive, our only option was to walk away from the road and into the forest, but probably because of a meteorite that fell nearby, there seemed to be dense deposits of metal scattered throughout the area. And thanks to these pockets of concentrated magnetic material, our compasses would be of no use. It seems plausible that this strange hole with its overhanging walls had been gorged into the earth by the impact of the meteorite. The bare rock of the walls had turned to glass under the assault of momentary high temperature. Even reading out this dry, factual summary of our situation from the notebook was enough to drain my spirits. Where exactly were we supposed to find hope in any of this? If it's that bad, rather than messing around consuming our physical strength, we'd be better off calmly waiting for a rescue. Yes, I think that's best as well. Although I wanted to escape this disturbing place as quickly as possible, there was no guarantee that any of us would return alive if we wandered off aimlessly now. Continuing the investigation of our surroundings until a more certain path presented itself, while waiting for the arrival of rescue, seemed the wiser choice by far. I felt a wave of relief wash through my body at the captain's decision. Oh, I don't know about that. I looked behind me with a start. Kazumi Kazuki, the very person who shoved me onto this little stage, had spoken those words. Kazuki, the very person who had told me to explain things clearly and logically so no one acts rashly, had disrupted the discussion just as we were beginning to reach a consensus. I couldn't begin to understand why. I glanced at her face with an irrepressible frown. And what's that supposed to mean? Do you have a counter-argument? I do. It's certainly true that we have no guarantee we will return alive if we wander off aimlessly. However, we also have no guarantee that we will be rescued if we simply wait. I'm aware of that, thank you. I don't intend to wait here for the rest of my life. But don't you think marching off into the jungle without adequate investigation is suicide? By what standard would you determine when your investigation is adequate? We don't have ample drinking water, let alone food. I don't think we have much time to sit around and plan things over. In my humble opinion, we might as well get moving while our physical and mental state is still favorable. Huh, with an option like that, you really should be humble. The mountains are a great deal harsher than amateurs like us tend to think. But if you dislike my decision, please feel free to head into the forest by yourself. I said too much. Allow me to apologize. Fine, as long as you got the message. If it was unexpected to hear Kazuki raise an objection in the first place, it was just as surprising to see her withdraw her opinion so easily. Still holding my silence, I asked Kazuki a question with my gaze. What was that all about? In response to my gaze, Kazuki returned her own wordless answer with a movement of her eyes and a jerk of her chin. Don't worry about it. Keep going. Then our next priority should probably be establishing a base camp. How about we begin working on retrieving anything that might be useful from the Otherson bus? Yes, that seems about right. Let's divide the work and begin at once. Is that acceptable, Miss Sochi? Yeah, let's get started. After that, we were divided between a group collecting things from the bus and a group responsible for sorting these items and preparing to erect our tents. We set about our work in silence. I was assigned to the collection team because of my sturdy physique, which meant I was stuck with the job of crawling into the overturned bus and dragging out whatever luggage I could find. The work itself wasn't that difficult in the physical sense, but inside the bus, the bodies of the two girls who had died instantly were still left untouched. And every time I passed by, I couldn't help but see resentment in their faces. Chewing my lower lip, I forced out the willpower to go on, although I wasn't conscious of it. The strain of my nerves built with every trip. Finally, the dim interior of the bus was all but emptied of luggage, with the exception of the personal belongings of the dead. Probably because I'd passed the corpses so many times now, I'd grown somewhat used to the expressions of bitter regret. Maybe it would be more accurate to say that my emotions had been paralyzed. And so I joined my hands before the body of Shikanai Tsukasa, my senior by 2 years, and whispering, "I'm sorry," pulled her luggage free. How goes it? What? Was the shriek really necessary? Now my ears hurt. Kasami-san, you startled me. Don't just start talking to me all of a sudden. Is there a way to begin talking to someone that isn't sudden? What is it? You need something? I had nothing better to do, so I came and helped strip the bodies of their belongings. Do you have to put it like that? It's not as if they can hear us. As she spoke, Kazuki gently closed Shigisai-senpai's eyelids. The other body? Over there. Osawa-senpai, the second year. Osawa? Ah, the one who'd been struggling to control her figure. Why don't you just come out and say she was fat? If I said it like that, I'd hurt her feelings. It's not like she can hear us. Oh my, I do believe you're going to hell for that one. This coming from you, of all people? Me? I'm in church every Sunday morning. Huh? Really? Oh, I get it. Should I laugh now? Too late. Leave Fatty to me. You go ahead and take that luggage outside. Fatty, she says. Kazuki was a truly elusive person. At times she reversed herself with dizzying speed. Had she seen that I was depressed and turned this black humor to make me smile? Ah, that reminds me. Why did you suddenly disagree with the captain just now? That wasn't what we'd planned. Ah, that. Did you see the captain's face back then? What about it? She looked perfectly content as long as you were merely explaining our situation, but as soon as you began to direct the discussion, her expression became extremely sullen. Therefore, before she could develop some ridiculous need to resist our argument, I decided to provide my own opposition. I knew that when I interjected, she would inevitably snap back at me. If I then allowed her to win the argument, her mood would improve for the moment. So that was all just... If I hadn't butted in at that point, I believe that down the line, say 3 days after our food supplies grew uncertain, she would have thrown in the towel and proposed an attempt at escape. But if she were to reverse her opinion, now that she's pushed it over mine, it would become an admission that I was correct all along. The captain's obstinacy towards Kazuki had become a powerful reason for her to keep us where we were. You were thinking that far ahead? When you consider things from a long-term perspective, losing can sometimes be a profitable choice. Although it may seem difficult to think even a moment ahead in a situation like this, try to act while imagining yourself 10 days from now. Sometimes I feel like I'm suffocating when you're around. Is that so? But then again, life is short and you only get one try. It can't hurt to try getting to know a genius, can it? Genius, is it? You actually call yourself a genius? Not that I like to hear it from others, as I'm sure you would dislike being called an idiot, but nonetheless disparage yourself as just an idiot in order to put people off their guard. But I really am an idiot. No, you're not an idiot. True idiots are those who make enemies of geniuses. We are friends, if I remember correctly. But of course, I must say I like how quick you are on the uptake. Very kind of you. What the heck? Geez, seriously. I must be something like a toy to her. I did feel discomfort at the effortless control she had over me, but I'm sure Kasaki knew as well as I did that I wouldn't oppose her in the end. That realization was irritating in its own right, but truthfully by this point I got myself so aggravated that I felt like smiling instead. Heaving a loud sigh of surrender, I turned my attention back to stripping the dead girl of her possessions. It took an hour to retrieve all the camping gear and personal belongings from the overturned bus. But now we had to face a difficult question. What do we do about the 2 bodies still in the bus? That was the problem. Somebody raised the idea of having everybody carrying them out together, but considering the cramped interior of the bus, it would be impossible for all of us to participate. Someone else suggested that we should leave them be, rather than clumsily dragging them around, but at Kazuki's words, it's hot today, isn't it? How long does it take for a corpse to begin rotting, I wonder? That idea was instantly abandoned. Finally, everyone gathered. Finally, everyone gathered. There fell silent. Our pleading glances settled on the only man present, Mr. Ochi. And after a few minutes, when he placed his hands on his knees and stood up with the words, "I'll do it," every one of us breathed a sigh of pure relief. Having entered the overturned bus alone, Mr. Ochi emerged with Shikanai's body's cradled in his arms. The only ones who witnessed that moment were Kazuki, Captain Shakashita, and I. The others cast their eyes to the ground or turned away, avoiding the sight of their acquaintance's corpse. Probably because that sight was the distillation of a pitiless reality. To see that moment would have meant facing the truth they wanted so desperately to forget. To be honest, when I was collecting luggage from the bus, I had placed a hand on Shikisai's body with the thought of carrying it outside. Startled to learn exactly how cold a human body could become when its blood stopped flowing, I withdrew my hands instantly. I hadn't felt this kind of a shock when I turned my grandmother's body in a casket at a funeral. Grandma's death, which I had known would come eventually, wasn't nearly that cold to the touch. Touching this girl's death, a death I couldn't view as with composure or resignation, turned my spine to ice. I didn't ever want to feel that way, ever again. Watching the removal of the bodies in sullen silence, I reflectively brought my hands together and began to pray for the dead. From behind my back I could hear whispering voices. That body, what do we do with it now? Bury it somewhere, I guess. Can we just do that? When we are rescued, won't her family be mad? We can't assume help will arrive right away. We can't just leave it like this. It's summer after all. Apparently sensing our anxiety, Mr. Ochi decided to bury the 3 bodies some ways away. At the very least, it wouldn't do to leave them where we could see them. Practically speaking, if we watched those corpses rot before our eyes, we would have to put our mental health at risk. In a situation like this one, panic is the greatest enemy. For the same reason, we decided it would be best if none of us acted alone. We paired off into units of 2. To put things nicely, the idea was to establish a dynamic of mutual support. But when we got to the heart of the matter, we were supposed to watch each other like hawks for signs of abnormal behavior. If one member of the pair caused a problem, both would be held responsible. Well, I'd been 80% sure it would turn out this way from the moment I heard about the rule. Kazami Kazuki named me her partner, the look on her face saying it was the most natural thing in the world. Well, that's that. My best regards once again. As she spoke, Kazuki moved to show me her left arm, now wrapped in a sling. Her meaning was clear enough. My arm was disabled thanks to you, so it's only natural that you pick up the slack for me, right? I didn't have any objection to acting as a unit with Kazuki. Judging from her words and actions so far, she was intelligent and knowledgeable. If I followed her lead, things shouldn't go wrong. Even so, I couldn't quite repress my feelings. Something like dissatisfaction or maybe confusion. Above all, I was tired of dancing so obediently on her strings. If you have a reason for choosing me other than the desire to bully me, could you please tell me what it is? I chose you so I could bully you. If you have complaints, I'll listen. Not that I'll respond to them in any way. What's the point of complaining then? It'll help with your stress. If you want to live a long life, you shouldn't bury your resentment away. All the more so in a situation like this. Oh, that a fact. Any other questions? Is teasing me really that much fun? How odd. Why are you asking questions when you don't want to hear the answer? Are you the type who needs it put into words to get a thrill? This is a little hard to say, so I'll put it gently. You're a born masochist. I really shouldn't have asked. Don't worry, I happen to be a born sadist. I'm positive we'll get along. With those words, Kazuki held out her uninjured right arm toward me. Unable to immediately understand the meaning of her gesture, I stared blankly into her face. You have to put out your hand too. I can't shake hands by myself. Ah, I see. A handshake. I'm amazed you'd think of something so commonplace, Kasami-san. You can call me Kazuki-san. Mind if I call you Amane-chan in return? Huh? Ah, okay. Well then, best regards yet again, Amane-chan. Yes, my best regards to you as well, Kazuki-chan. I gripped Kazuki's outstretched hand with as much force as I could muster. Her hand was so small, it felt like I could quite literally crush it if I squeezed hard enough. And yet, even then, when all I could see ahead of us was uncertainty and danger, I had the feeling that a small hand would save me. And that's where we'll end this episode. So, things are definitely not looking good. But hopefully they will get better in the future, maybe. Anyway, that's it for this episode, so until next time, take care.